to have thrown a gun out of the vehicle on the 710 freeway. Continuing here, 60 miles an hour on Slauson Avenue with the cross of Everett, the City of Bell Department in pursuit of this vehicle, and there is also an airship overhead. As he comes up to this light, let's see what he does, squeezing by there, making that right-hand turn onto Maywood Avenue from Slauson. And again, he continues to circle these residential areas, lots of turns. He seems to be familiar with it, though, because he has not driven into a dead-end street just yet. So, again, a police pursuit that we first found on the freeway, but it's unclear how long it had been going on before we got overhead, because we actually can't hear this frequency on the scanner. So we are just following along and letting you know what we see as it happens. And we also got some information from the police helicopter overhead. But again, City of Bell Police Department in pursuit of a vandalism suspect. And you see that there's actually some people coming out of their homes to see this police pursuit go by. So the word is getting out to the neighborhood that the pursuit has made its way to their area, and some people are stepping outside of their home to see it go by, squeezing by that car there. Fortunately, did not hit it, and is now making a turn here onto East 52nd Street. Unknown how many people are in the car or whether the driver is a man or a woman. I believe that it is going to be a man, just based off of some of the information that we got from the police helicopter. But whether or not anybody else is inside, that is still unclear. Pushing in here, I kind of wanted to see what type of car it was. I believe it's a Chevy. The windows are darkly tinted, though. I can't see inside. Hard on the brakes there, making another turn. I'll use this chance to look at the back of the vehicle. You can actually see that his lights are out. They only turned on there when he hit the brakes, but he's actually driving blacked out, which makes this so dangerous, because if you're a vehicle on the road or you're even a pedestrian walking, you're not going to see this guy coming, because it's a dark vehicle. He's blacked out. Streets are dark here in the area because it's a residential area, and you've got, fortunately, at least 3 or 4 units behind the person, so you would see the lights and sirens from the police vehicles and hear them as well. And then you also have the night sun of the helicopter overhead shining its light on this vehicle, kind of just trying to alert people in the area that this pursuit is coming their way. Yeah, I believe the vehicle is a Chevy. I can see the logo there on the front. Continuing here in the Maywood area, I would venture to say that this is an area that this person is familiar with, based off of how many turns he's been able to make without driving himself into a dead-end street. The closest he got to a dead-end street was a T intersection, and he got out of that just fine. Simon Desk, are we streaming on Telemundo as well? Continuing here on Gifford Avenue. Hitting the brakes there, just enough to clear the intersection and continue on. So the good news is that he slowed down substantially compared to what we've seen. But these are still residential surface streets where the speed limit is likely 25 miles an hour, and at times he's going twice that. And he's blacked out, which makes it difficult to see that he's coming your way. Copy. Thank you, Jamie. Might be a figment of my imagination. No, it's not. He's actually opening his door. So I just saw just a couple seconds ago, it was difficult to see because the vehicle is so dark and it's pretty dark down there. But he was actually opening his door. So perhaps he's getting ready to abandon the vehicle and take off running, and he just wanted to make sure that his door was open for when that happens. And I think someone just threw something at him too. I saw something flying his way. So the neighborhood knows about this. People here know that he is continuing to circle their neighborhood, and we just saw somebody throw something at him. It didn't hit him, but it got close. And again, we did see his door open just for a few seconds, so I think he might be preparing to abandon the vehicle here at some point. I don't think he's going to do it on the major. I think he's going to wait till he's back in the residential area, which he seems to be familiar with because he continues to circle that same area. But now we're back out on the major, Slauson Avenue and Otis here in the Southgate area. Now he's turning back into the neighborhood, so let's see if my hypothesis was right here, and he's getting ready to abandon the vehicle and take off running. Just from covering these things, we know that people tend to return to an area that is familiar to them so that they can either run inside their home, run inside a friend's home, or just hide somewhere where they're familiar. So it's something that we see time and time again, which is why I mention it. Doesn't mean that it's going to happen in this situation, but it's just a possibility. Cross traffic here. He's able to clear it. That car waited for him, fortunately. What really worries me here is that the streets are so narrow and you've got cars parked on either side of the road. For that reason, the police department is not going to try a pit maneuver. I actually don't know, though, if the City of Bell Police Department is even pit approved. You have to be a pit approved department in order to do a pit maneuver, and I'm not sure, just off the top of my head, I'm not sure if they are. So we don't know at this point if we'll see a pit. If we do, it's not going to be on one of these narrow streets. It's going to have to be on a wider street with really no other cars around, and the speeds need to be just right as well. 35 miles an hour or less is ideal. Typically, if they try to do it, if the officers try to do the pit when the vehicle is trying to make a turn, it could be more effective than if he's just on a straightaway like this. Let's see what happens here. Major street coming up. He makes that left-hand turn onto District Boulevard. And let me take this time to widen out, count the vehicles behind him. So we do still have 3 cars. We've got the airship overhead, District Avenue, and Corona. Now entering the Vernon area. Vernon is a very small city, mostly industrial. And now he's wrong side of the road here, really for no apparent reason. And he's picking up speed about 50 miles an hour now here. Continuing on Vernon. I'm sorry, on District Boulevard in Vernon. A driver who is wanted for some sort of vandalism. And once officers were in pursuit of him on the 710 freeway, they saw him toss a gun. And usually when that happens, one of the officers will hang back and retrieve the article while the others continue the pursuit. Now, it's unclear to us where this pursuit started initially, but we know it was somewhere within the City of Bell. And the City of Bell is a small city just off the 710 freeway, south of Vernon, so south of our current location. And at this point, unclear if it's a man or a woman behind the wheel or how many people may be inside. Okay, coming up to a light here. Fortunately, he got the green. And his speeds have slowed down. So sometimes what the officers will do is something called surveillance mode. That's a smokestack that we're going by here. Again, we're in Vernon, so there's a lot of factories here. If you see some smoke, don't be surprised. It's not a fire. What I was going to say, though, is sometimes in these situations when the driver is driving very recklessly, the police department can go into what's called surveillance mode, which means that they will follow the vehicle from the helicopter only, and they'll have some of the units hang back so that the people in the pursuit will think that they are no longer being pursued. And by doing that, the thought process is that the driver will slow down, will start to stop at stop signs, stop at red lights, and just drive more normally, and eventually, hopefully, drive all the way home where officers will be waiting to take him or her into custody. Now that works sometimes. He just ran that red, by the way. That works sometimes, but not all the time. And in this case, I have not heard any mention of going into surveillance mode, but we do still have the airship as well as at least 3 police cruisers behind the vehicle. Soto Street and 58th Street now here in the Huntington Park area. Coming up to a red. That's so dangerous. He keeps running all those red lights. Completely blacked out here. You see the tail lights, the brake lights there only because he had to hit the brakes. Because he's got a red light and cross traffic, so he's going to make the right-hand turn onto Gage so that he wouldn't have to proceed straight past that traffic. It is County, Jim. Yeah, okay, perfect. I was talking there to my pilot, James Pollard, doing a great job of flying News Chopper 4 Alpha. Thank you, Jamie. And once again, thank you very much to everyone who is joining us online. We're going to continue to follow this pursuit here now in the Huntington Park area, but I'm actually going to take about a minute now to say a few words in Spanish for our sister station Telemundo. We're also streaming there. And as soon as we're done, we will resume. There we go. We'll continue our coverage here in English on NBC. Buenas noches desde el helicóptero. Yo soy Eliana Moreno reportando sobre la ciudad de Huntington Park, donde la policía de la ciudad de Bell está persiguiendo a un vehículo, un Ford. La persona que está manejando este vehículo es buscada en conexión con un acto de vandalismo que ocurrió en la ciudad de Bell. La persecución continuó desde esa ciudad hasta la autopista 710 en dirección norte, donde nosotros empezamos siguiendo la persecución hasta que el vehículo salió de la autopista y se salió a las calles de Maywood, Vernon y ahora en la ciudad de Huntington Park. Al momento se desconoce cuántas personas hay adentro del vehículo o si el conductor es una mujer o un hombre, pero la policía nos dice que cuando el vehículo estaba en la autopista 710 en dirección norte, la persona que está manejando el carro aventó una pistola del vehículo hacia la autopista. La policía ya ha recogido ese artículo y ahora la persecución continúa aquí en las calles de Vernon a alta velocidad. El conductor no para las luces rojas cuando llega a un semáforo. Tampoco ha bajado su velocidad en las áreas residenciales, continuando a manejar a alta velocidad, como lo ven aquí, a 60 millas por hora, 70 millas por hora, en áreas donde la velocidad debe de ser aproximadamente de 35 a 40 millas por hora. Pero nosotros vamos a seguir siguiendo esta persecución aquí en la ciudad de Vernon. Pero por ahora yo soy Eliana Moreno, Telemundo 52. Back with you guys here in English. You saw him pick up speed there as he made his way here on Soto Street, roughly about 60 miles an hour on a street that, by my guess, is probably closer to 40 or 45. He's completely blacked out. And the sheriff's helicopter overhead, City of Bell police behind the car, a vandalism suspect who at one point threw a gun out the window when he was on the 710 freeway. That is where we caught up with the pursuit as he was approaching the East LA interchange, and he exited though onto surface streets, and he's been on surface streets ever since in the city of Maywood, Vernon, Huntington Park, and now back into Vernon. And there is not a red light that this guy is stopping for. Running every red light, running every stop sign, high speeds, even on small residential streets. And you might be having trouble seeing him there, but he's in the middle of the shot there, completely blacked out, with at least 3 units from the City of Bell Police Department close behind. Making a turn there onto Olympic from Soto. So these are major streets here. I believe this actually places us now in the East LA area. It's just dangerous. I mean, it is a Friday night. People are out taking an evening walk, and you have this guy coming at you high speeds with his lights off, which makes it difficult to see. But fortunately, you've got the units behind him with their lights and sirens on, making it a little bit easier for people in the area to know that this is coming their way. Now he's wrong side of the road here on Olympic, really for no apparent reason, because there's no traffic on the right side of the road. And he's making another turn there onto Grande Vista Avenue from Olympic. So we're just south of the East LA interchange where the 5, the 60, the 101, and the 10 all come together. And this pursuit started in the City of Bell, which is going to be closer to the 710 freeway. So he may just be trying to find his way back to the freeway to head back south on that 710. But he does appear to be pretty familiar with the area, considering that he hasn't driven himself into a dead end. Continuing here on Olympic, making a turn onto Soto. So in the direction that he's going now, which is northbound, if he keeps going this way, actually we'll join him with the 5 freeway and he'd be able to jump on the 5 from there. So we'll see if that's something he decides to do, because if he does do that, he could take the 5 south to the 710 and get him back towards the area where this all began, running that red light there. Fortunately, all the other vehicles stopped because they saw the police cars. There's the freeway, though. Let's see what he does. There's going to be a few freeways here, so let's see. There's his turn. Nope, not getting on the freeway. So he's going to go under the freeways and come out on the other side. So this guy apparently doesn't like to go on the freeways. We saw him on the 710 freeway for just a very short stretch of time, but otherwise he's been on surface streets this whole time. Hard on the brakes there. He had a green, though. Okay, pursuit continuing here. Wrong side of the road here, entering the intersection. Red light and continuing straight. So you'll see that banner there on the bottom of the screen. We'd like to invite you, if you have a smart TV, you can actually watch our coverage of this pursuit and other breaking news situations in the future by downloading the NBCLA app onto your television. So if you have Roku, Apple TV, or just a smart TV, you can search NBCLA. You can find us there. It's all free, and you'll be able to watch the coverage of this pursuit, or again, any other breaking news in the future, any other pursuits, brush fires, or any major news. You'll get an alert and be able to watch us on the big screen. Again, search NBC LA. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to take just a minute once again to just let our sister station Telemundo viewers know what is going on here with this pursuit as it enters the Boyle Heights area. Buenas noches desde el helicóptero. Yo soy Eliana Moreno junto con mi piloto James Pollard, siguiendo esta persecución que ahora está entrando al área de Boyle Heights en la calle Soto, dando una vuelta aquí en la calle Wabash. Esta es una persecución que empezó en la ciudad de Bell. La ciudad de Bell está localizada cerca de la autopista 710, cerca a la ciudad de Bell Gardens, por ejemplo. También no muy lejos de las ciudades de Vernon, el este de Los Ángeles. Es una persecución que empezó aproximadamente a las 10 de la noche. Nosotros encontramos la autopista, encontramos la persecución cuando estaba en la autopista 710 en dirección norte, acercándose a la autopista 5 en el área de Commerce y el este de Los Ángeles. El conductor de este vehículo Ford se salió de la autopista y continúa manejando en las calles de las ciudades de Vernon, Huntington Park, en la ciudad de Maywood también, y ahora se encuentra en el área del este de Los Ángeles, también en el área de Boyle Heights, muy cerca de las autopistas 5 y 10. Este es un conductor que es buscado en conexión con un acto de vandalismo, y la policía también nos cuenta que durante la persecución el conductor aventó una pistola del vehículo. Al momento se desconoce si la persona detrás del volante es una mujer o un hombre, o cuántas personas están adentro de este vehículo. Pero como pueden ver, la persecución continúa aquí ahora en la área de City Terrace. Reportando desde el helicóptero, Eliana Moreno, Telemundo 52. Back with you guys here in English on NBC. This is going to be the City Terrace area where the pursuit continues at slow speeds. I'm actually hearing a little update here on the scanner now that the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department is talking about it. They are requesting some spike strips. So we're not going to mention where those will be deployed because, of course, we wouldn't want to give the driver any sort of heads up about the spike strips being in his or her way. So we're going to withhold that information for the time being, but we'll let you know once they do attempt to deploy those so that you'll know that we passed that point. So at this point, no talk of a pit maneuver, but they are talking about spike strips. Again, City Terrace area just off of Stone Street. This is just south of the 10 freeway, not far from the 710 freeway. We're just west of the 710 freeway. Coming up to Evergreen here, which is going to be the major here. And he's going to make a northbound turn onto Evergreen. Evergreen Cemetery, not far from here. And making that westbound turn onto Wabash Avenue again. We've seen him on the street before. Bell PD behind the vehicle, LA County Sheriff's Department on top. It's going to be Air 29 on over the chase. The city of Bell doesn't have their own helicopter because it is a smaller agency, but with situations like this, they will call the aero unit down in Long Beach and ask for assistance with one of their helicopters. And so that's likely the course of action that was taken, and now Sheriff's Department overhead with Bell PD behind the vehicle. Making another turn here onto Malabar Street. We saw him circle the area of Maywood for a really long time earlier. It seemed like that's where, if he was going to abandon the car, it looked like that would be the area. But now he seems to kind of be creeping his way here through City Terrace. So perhaps this is also an area that he is familiar with and is possibly looking for a place to abandon the car and take off running. And I say he, but at this point it's unclear if it is a man or a woman behind the vehicle or how many people may be inside. But somebody who was wanted in connection with the vandalism. And then during the pursuit, officers say they saw him throw a gun out the window, which of course was recovered by now by one of the officers who trailed back and got that article, and in the meantime the other officers continued following the pursuit. We're now back out on a major street. This is going to be Cesar Chavez Avenue, and he's going to have a light coming up here, but he got the green on that one. So there's the cemetery I was talking about just on the top of the screen. Let me check. I hear you, Mark. Thank you. I was just talking to our engineering department there because we are getting everything in place to start the NBC4 News at 11 o'clock. That is coming up here in the next 15 minutes. So, of course, we hope you can tune in then. We'll have the latest on this pursuit as well as all of today's news on, again, the NBC4 News at 11 o'clock. We'll continue to stream this pursuit, though, in the meantime. That is now very close to Evergreen Cemetery here, coming over the train tracks, making that left-hand turn onto East 1st Street, rather. And we had a pursuit here a couple years ago where the driver actually drove onto the train tracks, and the train runs underground here, and he actually was able to dodge officers that way for a little bit. Eventually, the driver and his female companion were apprehended, but every time I see those tracks, it actually reminds me of that pursuit. Continuing here, 1st Street and Dittman. Dittman runs parallel to the 5 here for a stretch, so it's a good alternate if you're ever stuck in traffic there. But he is wrong side of the road here because there was a little bit of traffic up ahead of him, so he dodged some of those slower moving vehicles by going on the wrong side. But there's been times when he goes on the wrong side of the road just for the sake of it. There's no reason behind it, but now right side of the road here on First Street with a cross of Dickerson. In the East Los Angeles area, very close to the East LA interchange, where the 5, the 101, the 10, and the 60 all come together. Okay, hard on the brakes there because he's got the red. And he'll just make that right-hand turn on to Eastern. There's the freeway. So let's see if he finds a way to get on it. But I don't think he wants to get on the freeway, quite frankly, because he's had some chances and he's dodged them all. Back near the train tracks now that I was talking about before. Okay, red light there. A turn on a Whittier Boulevard. We were just at Calvary Cemetery there. We're very close to the 5 and the 710 freeways. We first heard about this pursuit on the 710 freeway, so I wouldn't be surprised if he tried to get back on. And right now he's on Whittier, so Whittier is a major street, and it will be a good access point for him if he wants to get on the freeway. We're very close also to the Commerce train yard. I've actually got the train yard off my left side. Okay, he's making a turn. Here's a U-turn. Yep, it's a U-turn. He got to Indiana Street, and then he made a U-turn on Whittier. So now he's headed eastbound on Whittier, picking up speed here. Okay, red light, green light, there we go. You see some people are coming out, they want to wave at the driver, they want to document it for their social media. It's never advised, of course, because you could end up getting in the way of this pursuit and possibly getting hurt or getting somebody else hurt. So we're now on Herbert. Herbert runs parallel to the 710 freeway, I believe. Okay, just made a turn there. So once again, we're just getting everything ready for the NBC4 News at 11 o'clock coming up here in less than 10 minutes. Almost got hit by that car there, but he turned just in time. Now back on to Whittier. He's been on Whittier before. Whittier and Downey there. Now back in the area of Calvary Cemetery. So if you pardon me here for just a minute, I'm going to say a few words for our sister station Telemundo. We're also streaming there, and then we'll continue our coverage in English. Buenas noches desde el helicóptero. Yo soy Ileana Moreno, reportando junto con mi piloto James Pollard sobre esta persecución en el este de Los Ángeles, muy cerca del cementerio que está localizado en la calle Eastern. Y ahora el conductor se está subiendo a la autopista 710 en dirección sur. Esta es una autopista, una persecución que empezó cerca de la ciudad de Bell. La policía de Bell es el departamento que está persiguiendo a este vehículo, y el helicóptero que está sobre la persecución es el departamento del condado de Los Ángeles, el departamento del alguacil. Este es un conductor que es buscado en conexión con un acto de vandalismo, y durante la persecución la policía dice que el conductor aventó una pistola del vehículo. La persecución era primero en la autopista 710 en dirección norte. El conductor se salió y manejó en las calles de las ciudades de Maywood, Vernon, Huntington Park, Boyle Heights, el este de Los Ángeles, y ahorita se acaba de montar a la autopista 710 de la calle Whittier, y ahora vamos en dirección sur. Vamos a llegar al área de Commerce en un momento. Al momento se desconoce cuántas personas están adentro del vehículo o si la persona manejando es un hombre o una mujer, pero ha sido una persecución muy peligrosa de alta velocidad, donde el conductor no ha parado por las luces rojas, y les repito, ha sido muy peligrosa en las velocidades, porque hasta en las áreas residenciales ha manejado a alta velocidad. Y ahora lo vemos aquí en la autopista 710 en dirección sur, cerca de la calle Atlantic, manejando a más de 80 millas por hora. Reportando desde el helicóptero, Eliana Moreno, Telemundo 52. Back with you guys here on NBC LA. We, of course, thank you very much for your viewership online, and hopefully on the NBC4 News here on your televisions in the next few minutes. We have the NBC4 News at 11 a.m. That's how long this pursuit has gone on. I forgot what time it is. 11 p.m. rather. A pursuit that's been going on now for about an hour, and it's southbound here on the 710 freeway. He actually hopped on the freeway at about Whittier. And this is the second time that we've seen him on the freeway. We saw him initially on the northbound side of the 710. That's where we picked it up. We were the first news helicopter overhead. And then we followed him on surface streets for quite a while before he hopped back on the freeway. But he may be hopping off, so let's see. Or he may take the connector road here and continue on the freeway, which is what I think he's going to do. This is going to be Florence. So we're not far from like the Bell Gardens Casino. It's just on the other side of the freeway. And he may be exiting and actually heading that way. So he's going to complete the turn here. And if he does, it should drop him off so that he's forced to go eastbound. But I wouldn't be surprised if he hangs a U and goes west instead. We've seen that type of crazy driving here. And that's exactly what he's going to do. He's going to make that U-turn and head westbound. Westbound Florence from the 710 freeway over the LA River. Wrong side of the road here. Oh my gosh, wrong side of the road here. Oh, car's coming right at him. This could be really bad. Okay, right side of the road once more time. Let's hope he stays on the right side. Okay, we're back in Bell, where this all began, so we may possibly see him abandon the vehicle here at some point. And now our newscast here at 11 is going to start just in the next few minutes. We, of course, hope you can tune in then. We'll continue to show you this pursuit here as it comes through the city of Bell. I'm just going to take about a minute break to catch my breath here before we start the show. We, once again, thank you very much for watching. 2.5, please. Thank you. Two minutes. Seconds. One minute.
Ileana Moreno live overhead in News Chopper 4 Alpha. Ileana.
This pursuit is still in the city of Bell, but it's taken us as far north as Boyle Heights. Now, this is a pursuit that started at about 10 o'clock. The vehicle's right in the center of the screen, but he's all blacked out, so it's tough to see sometimes. It's a Ford sedan with the City of Bell Police Department in pursuit behind the vehicle and the LA County Sheriff's Department helicopter overhead. At this point, it's unclear how many people may be in the car or whether it's a man or a woman behind the vehicle, but it is somebody who is wanted in connection with an act of vandalism. And when this pursuit was on the 710 freeway, that is when the man or woman allegedly threw a gun out the window that has since been recovered by the police department. This is a pursuit that has been mostly on surface streets, but it has hopped on and off the 710 freeway during this lengthy high-speed pursuit where we've seen speeds as high as 90 to 100 miles an hour.
Ileana, looking at the speeds right now and the neighborhoods he's in, is there talk about either a pit maneuver or a spike strip?
There is talk about a spike strip, Colleen, so we have heard them ask for units that are equipped with that spike strip to come to the area and set it up ahead, but we of course won't give the exact location just in case the driver is monitoring our broadcast or he has a friend who is relaying the information that we're hearing. But after he or she comes up to that point, we will let you know. But at this point, they haven't talked about the pit maneuver, though they have talked about that spike strip. And the only reason why I think the pit maneuver hasn't come into the equation is that the units behind them have to be pit equipped, which means they have to go through certain courses to be able to perform a pit maneuver. And just off the top of my head, I don't know if the city of Bell is one of those departments that is pit equipped. So at this point, I believe that that is perhaps why this hasn't come into the conversation. But the pursuit continuing now here in the city of Huntington Park, which is actually not their jurisdiction anymore. So the Huntington Park Police Department could take over if they so choose to. But for now, still the Bell Gardens Police in pursuit.
And Ileana, what we're seeing here really compounds the danger when you do not have the lights of the chopper. This is a car without headlights, and that is very dangerous going through these residential neighborhoods.
So dangerous. This guy is already a dark colored vehicle, so he's tough to see as it is. And then when he's completely blacked out, it really makes things more difficult. And even on these small residential streets, we've seen him go about 65 miles an hour. So even if you saw him coming, you might not be able to get out of his way. So fortunately, the Bell Gardens Police Department is still trailing him. You would definitely see their lights, you would hear their sirens, and hopefully that would give you enough time to run out of the way. But in spite of all that, in spite of all the danger, we've seen people come out and cheer on the driver. They've come out to the sidewalk and they've just been on their cell phone trying to document this for their personal social media, just kind of cheering this person on, which of course is not advised because you don't want to put yourself in a dangerous situation.
Well, he really does seem to know, pardon me, the neighborhood he's in. He's taken us on a lot of twists and turns here. And Robert, you're right. He's running right now with no headlights at all. The only time we saw him with headlights was when he was on the 710 freeway, and that was for a brief period of time. Ileana, what's the advantage of that? If your lights are off, can you not read the license plate?
Yeah, I believe that what the driver's trying to do in this case is just be less visible to the police department. He thinks that if he turns his lights off, they're not going to see him. But of course, they still can. And by now they have the plate. They've been chasing him for about an hour at this point. And there's been times when they've been able to get pretty close where he has slowed down his speeds. Situations like this one right here where the officer could clearly read his plate. And as far as we know, this isn't a stolen car. It's a Ford. I don't know the exact model, but it is a Ford vehicle. And it could sit as many as 5 people, but the windows are so darkly tinted, we can't see inside. So at this point, I don't think the police department even knows how many people may be inside this vehicle.
Ileana, take us back here a little bit. This is a pursuit that's been going on for an hour. You said in the Bell Southgate area it originated. So we have up there that this is a driver wanted for vandalism. Again, we don't know how many people are in the car, but tell us a little bit more about the gun that was thrown out of this vehicle. Was it thrown out from the passenger side, driver's side? Where was it? And what more can you tell us about how this is all connected?
So here's how we know that there was a gun thrown out. We were actually the first media ship over the pursuit. My pilot, James Pollard, actually spotting the lights from the police cars as they were traveling northbound on the 710 freeway. And then he was able to communicate police helicopter overhead, which was the LA County Sheriff's Department, and they were the ones that told us what this person was wanted for and that he had thrown a gun out on the freeway. So it happened right before we got overhead. So whether it came out the driver's side or passenger side is unclear to us at this point, but we do know that that gun was thrown out. It was recovered, so they were able to identify it as such. So at this point, because he already threw out a gun, there's the chance he's no longer armed, but of course there's always the possibility that he had more than one gun. So for that reason, they're still going to treat it as if he is armed. They're going to be very careful, and that could be another reason why, even if we do get pit-equipped units behind him, we might not see a pit maneuver just because of the sheer danger level.
Ileana, can you give us an idea of exactly where we are? We see the street names and the numbers above, but what city are we in right now? Any landmarks here we should recognize?
So we're in Huntington Park, and Huntington Park borders the cities of Bell, Cudahy, Southgate. It's Huntington Park is really more of a residential commercial area, but no major landmarks. If he continues traveling in this direction, though, it's actually going to get him over to the Bell Gardens Casino, which is just off the freeway. So that would be our nearest major landmark coming up. And he's making this turn here onto Pacific, I believe, from Saturn. So it's going to be a
okay.
open street.
There we are. We're back.
There we are.
lost you for a moment there, Ileana.
Ileana, we were talking about this
guys.
car going in before. Again, this pursuit's been going on for some time. It's gone the wrong way at times. It's been speeding through some neighborhoods where there are homes. We understand that someone or people threw something at this car at one point.
They did. I'm glad you brought that up, because it was actually when he was in the Maywood area, and he kept circling the same area. It seemed like it was an area that he's familiar with. It looked like he was starting to get ready to ditch the car and take off running. And it was when he was on one of the small residential streets, where the streets on that section were very narrow. There were cars on either side of the road. And out of one of the homes, we saw something go flying in his direction. So it was one of the people in the area that knew that the pursuit kept circling their streets, and they threw something at him. We don't know exactly what it was, and it actually didn't hit him. It hit the ground nearby. But that was when he was in the Maywood area, and he really hasn't gone back to that area since. After that, he actually went up towards the East LA interchange. He went up to Boyle Heights, and then he went over to City Terrace, just off the 10 and 710 freeways. He circled that area for a good bit, and that looked like an area that he was also very familiar with before he went on to some of the major streets there in the area, including Whittier Boulevard, where he jumped on the 710 South and brought us back into the city of Bell.
This is so very dangerous. I mean, it's hard to even make out this car because he's rolling through neighborhoods that don't appear to have a lot of street lights here. He's totally running without lights. And until we see the light from the chopper, it's almost hard to make him out here.
Yeah, it's really difficult to see him sometimes because it is a dark-colored vehicle. He's got his lights on, or lights off, rather. They're dark streets. But when he hits his brakes, that's actually one of the only times that we can see him like he just did there. The airship is... it has its light on him every now and then. We're actually entering the LAX airspace, so we're going to be a little bit more limited in what we can do until he exits back out of that airspace. So we actually need him to go either north or east, so that we'll be able to continue following him as closely as we have been. But he continues here, Huntington Park area. And there is actually something else I want to mention that we haven't brought up before. There was a course or a time during the course of this pursuit that we actually saw him open his door. He didn't open it the whole way. It was just a very subtle opening of the door, but it looked like he was just getting it unlocked, getting it ready to go so that he could just open it and run. But for some reason, he decided against it, and it's been about 30 minutes since that happened. So at this point, I think he's just going to try his luck with the vehicle.
Ileana, we've seen so many times in the past, and this reckless driver may be no different, that these pursuits tend to stick around a certain neighborhood and tend sometimes to just circle around a certain neighborhood. You mentioned Maywood tonight. Was that giving you sort of an indication this is the area that he wanted to stick around, and then perhaps the police got a little too close and he pushed off, or what can you tell us?
I definitely think that's it, because he circled Maywood for a good while, and some of the turns and the ways he was going were very complicated, that you could easily get lost and end up in a dead-end street, which he never did. And so because of that, it led me to believe that he was pretty familiar with the area, and he was able to never get lost, essentially, where most of us probably would if it was an area that we weren't familiar with. So now he's wrong side of the road here. He's trying to get back on the right side. But there's been times when he's gone on the wrong side of the road, literally for no reason. There's been no traffic ahead of him, and he's just decided that he just wants to go wrong way, which is so incredibly dangerous with cars coming at him, and he's still completely blacked out. So they don't see him coming at him at about 60 miles an hour or so.
Once again, he is still in Huntington Park.
Thank you, Jim.
The want on this car, this driver here, is vandalism. Ileana, do we know anything about that?
We actually don't have any information about the vandalism act itself, but we understand that because this started in the city of Bell, it was likely something that occurred in that area. And actually, speaking of the city of Bell, my pilot, Jim, is telling me that the ground units have actually been pulled off this pursuit. So that's actually why we don't see any of the city of Bell Police Department vehicles behind him. So this is essentially what is called surveillance mode. The helicopter is going to continue to follow the pursuit from above, but we're not going to see any ground units behind the vehicle. And the reason they do that, it's an effort to try to make the person think that they are no longer being pursued. And by doing so, maybe they'll slow their roll, they'll start to stop at stop signs, they'll turn on their lights perhaps,
yeah, just for
and it will be a little less dangerous.
The headlights work there, Ileana. And again, as you said, this is for the safety of those people on the street, on the sidewalk, and in that area to now go into a surveillance mode. Will they stay now in a surveillance mode, or could they go back into a pursuit? And what would trigger them to go back into a pursuit mode?
They would go back into a pursuit mode if they realize that the surveillance mode isn't working. So if they realize that this guy is still driving erratically, he's still running stop signs, red lights, he's still driving dangerously, then at that point they realize there's really no reason for us to pull off if he's going to continue to drive the way he has been. So at that point they would have them re-engage.
Yeah, but he's got his lights back on. He's got them on almost full time now. You know, I've been sitting here, Robert and Ileana, and thinking about this. I don't recall ever a pursuit starting with something like vandalism. It would seem like a lesser charge compared to all the things that we think about. And, you know, people run if they're driving a stolen car, or assault with a weapon, or, you know, a number of things. But vandalism, I just don't recall ever hearing about one of those.
Unless they know something the police don't know, Colleen, and perhaps that the people inside of that vehicle know they've got a couple other warrants and wants out for them. Sure. Hence dropping the gun out the window. So right now, Ileana,
I believe that it's because of the gun and perhaps other history things that they have on their record besides just the vandalism. Because, yeah, otherwise you would stop. It's really, I would imagine that most acts of vandalism wouldn't be worth it to lead officers on now more than an hour-long chase, endangering people's lives.
Starting in Bell, multiple cities, Bell, Vernon, Maywood. We're on Bandini right now. What city are we in here? Still in Huntington Park? Or are we moving towards East LA?
We're not far from Huntington Park. Yeah, we're actually in Vernon, though. Okay. So Vernon is a small city. It's mostly industrial. It's got a lot of factories, a very small population of residents. But on Bandini, and Bandini is actually a street that will take you to the Commerce Train Yard. So if he continues traveling in this direction, that is where we're going to end up. And you're already starting to see some of the big rigs off to the side of the road. So that will be where we will end up eventually if he continues this way. And you see him there behind one of the big rigs, actually. And he's actually slowed down significantly. So from my vantage point, it looks like surveillance mode is working.
Ileana, we don't know at this point how many people are in that car other than the driver.
We don't. We try to take a good look inside earlier, but the windows are so darkly tinted, it's really difficult to see anything. We can't even see out the front window, actually, when we were positioned from the front. What we can tell is that the vehicle is a Ford, and these types of cars can sit at least 5 people, but at this point, unclear how many people may be inside. And we never heard the police department making any reference as to how many people may be in the vehicle either.
Yeah, hearing reports that it could be a Chevy Malibu. And we talk about all the cities that are involved here, Ileana, but if you saw it on a map, these are all neighboring cities that they're all really right next door to each other. So in terms of the miles that he's traveled, it hasn't really been that extensive given the length of this pursuit.
Yeah, it really hasn't been too much. He's basically hugged the 710 freeway this whole time. So that area between the 710 and the 5, really, for the most part. The furthest north that he got was City Terrace, just off the 10 and 710 freeways. And he got to Boyle Heights at one point as well. But ever since then, he seems to tend to prefer the areas of Vernon, Huntington Park, and Maywood, as well as East Los Angeles. And now you can see he's slowed down significantly to the point where other cars are passing him. So this effort to get him to think that he is no longer being pursued appears to be working as he continues here on Downey Road.
We want to recap for just a minute. If you're just now joining us, what you're looking at here is a chase that's been going now for the better part of an hour. The want on this originally was vandalism, but police say they did at one point see someone throw something from the car. They tell us it was a gun. And for most of the evening, most of this chase, we've been watching with his lights out. They pulled into surveillance or tracking mode at this point. He's turned his lights back on. It would appear he almost feels confident that he can blend into sort of the landscape at this point.
It seems like it, Colleen. It seems almost like a level of complacency. As soon as you didn't see those flashing lights behind you, you feel confident that you can turn your lights on. And as you see, sort of slow down, go the speed limit, almost obeying the traffic signals.
But Ileana, the choppers are still overhead, aren't they?
Yeah, the LA County Sheriff's Department is still overhead, and they'll continue to track him. And in this case, he doesn't even have his light on, so he doesn't have the night sun on, so that the car won't see that as well and realize that even though he lost the cars, or in his mind he lost the cars, that the helicopter is no longer overhead as well. So, but it's still up there. It's just he's flying right below us, which is why we gained a little bit of altitude so that the police helicopter is also able to gain some altitude and be less visible to this person. But again, surveillance mode seems to be working. He actually turned his lights back on. He's driving at a slow rate of speed, probably even slower than some of these streets would warrant, considering how nice and open they are. But he's on District Boulevard here. He's been on this street before, coming up to Loma Vista here in the city of Vernon.
And so we right now are still in Vernon. We originated in Bell. We talked about the fact, Ileana, that
he's stopping?
He may be stopping. Yeah, it looked like he was maybe stopping there, but he changed his mind and is continuing on.
You mentioned that when you got overhead, Ileana, that he had just, or she had just thrown a gun that has now been retrieved by law enforcement out of the window.
Lights out again, Robert. Lights out again.
Lights out again. And Ileana, do we have any idea of how long this pursuit had been going on before you managed to get above it?
I can't imagine that it was going on for too long, because we picked it up right before it got to the Commerce Train Yard, and it started in the city of Bell, which is really not that far. So we actually spotted it when it was on the 710 freeway. My pilot, James Pollard, seeing the police lights on the 710 North, and at the time we didn't even know if it was a pursuit just yet, but we did follow the police cars, and then we found one vehicle that was just zigzagging his way on the freeway, driving erratically. And so it was at that point that we realized this is a pursuit, and this is the guy that they're looking for. And it was at that point that we asked the LA County Sheriff's Department for the reason why they were chasing this person, and they were able to relay the information that it was somebody who was wanted in connection with an act of vandalism, but had also tossed a gun out during the pursuit.
Are those lights back on?
No, they're still off, but it looks like he might be riding his... Well, no, you're right, Robert. They may have come right back on.
Yeah, it might be on there.
Ileana, it bears repeating what you mentioned earlier, and that is that the initial want on this was vandalism. It's not a stolen car. It's likely they've run the plates and they know who's in the car at this point.
Correct, yeah. So as far as we know, it's not a stolen car, which means that they're able to run the plates, they're able to get the registration information, which means that they're able to get the address where this person lives, and they are able to go to that home, and there's a police car there. Let's see what happens. Is he going to re-engage? Perhaps. Yep, looks like they're going to get back in. So it looks like they've decided that surveillance mode is fini, so they're going to get back behind the vehicle and continue the chase.
And what would prompt that, Ileana?
Repeat that for me one more time, Robert.
What would prompt that for them to say, you know what, surveillance mode didn't work this time, let's move in? And this, again, those moving in, I believe, are the Southgate Police Department.
It's unclear, really, because he wasn't driving erratically, which was what we were waiting for them to re-engage, and they decided just to get behind him one more time. I'm going to check that unit there. The lead unit is still City of Bell, so it's still City of Bell leading the chase there. There may be some Southgate units behind him, but usually the lead unit will be the one that originated the pursuit, and unless he runs out of gas, he's going to stay the lead unit for the duration of this pursuit.
And just want to point out that we can't give you a lot of information about what took place in Bell. Our assignment desk certainly has tried, but we find out from the Bell Police Department that those are involved and the watch commander right now are out in the field dealing with this police pursuit that we are watching right here live on NBC4.
Ileana, if you could, give us an idea of exactly where we are again. Are we still in the city of Vernon?
So we're actually just hugging the edge of Vernon and Huntington Park. So we're just on the southern end of Vernon, north end of Huntington Park. And again, Vernon, for those of you who may not be too familiar with the city, it's a very small city. It's got a lot of factories, very few residents in terms of homes, but it's mostly commercial. And at this time of the night, you really won't see too much traffic. You may get a lot of big rig traffic that is coming into some of these factories. In fact, you see some big rigs there off to the side of the screen. So you're not really talking about seeing too much traffic. And if he continues in this general direction, I mean, it'll get him pretty close to the Commerce Train Yard. That's kind of like our biggest landmark. I have it just out the left side of the helicopter right now. So for the most part, it seems like this is an area that he likes. Vernon, Huntington Park, Southgate. And he went as far as City Terrace or Boyle Heights, but hasn't come back.
Yeah, he's pretty much stayed off the freeways. I mean, he was on the 710 for a brief amount of time, got back off in the City of Bell into that residential neighborhood. But for the most part, this chase has mostly been on surface streets.
It really has. He only jumped on the 710 freeway once during the time that we were overhead. We first caught it on the freeway, but he exited quickly. He was on surface streets for a good amount of time before he hopped on the 710 freeway at Whittier Boulevard. And
did he stop right there and wait for the traffic light?
Yeah, he did.
So he's obeying the traffic lights. Ileana, Colleen, I can't tell from my vantage point, but I'm wondering, again, if we're looking at a Chevy Malibu, it doesn't seem as if the vehicle in any way is damaged or impaired. So the only thing that could perhaps slow this guy down or this woman down is running out of gas at this point.
Yeah, but to your point before, Robert, he keeps circling the same area, so he really hasn't gone that many miles. Even though he's been driving for over an hour now, he probably hasn't spent too much gas. But you never know how much he started off with to begin with.
Sure.
Now, we've had a couple pursuits, though, in the last couple months where people have actually stopped to get gas during the pursuit because they're running low.
Remember those, yeah.
We've witnessed that at least twice in the last few months. So nothing is really off the table at this point, especially with no units directly behind him. It could buy him the time that he needs should it come to a situation where he's low on gas.
Have the units pulled back off, or are they just giving him more room?
Let me widen it out real quick because I couldn't see as we were on that street there. No, I'm actually not seeing any directly behind him. They may be trailing a few blocks back. The airship's overhead, though. He continues to call out the streets. So when he feels the time is right, he can navigate the units back to this person, especially if they feel that he's about to ditch the car. That would be a good point to get the units a little bit closer. On small streets in the Huntington Park area, he was being very careful about each turn that he was making it very gingerly, which leads me to believe that perhaps he wasn't that familiar with that particular side of town, and so he wanted to make sure that he wasn't going to make a wrong turn. But it seems like he's actually stopping at red lights now and just driving a little bit more carefully. But now we have that behind him. And I think that's the pattern. Now that we've seen it twice, I think what the police department is doing now is that when they do see him slow down significantly like this, they think he's going to bail. They think he's going to abandon the car and take off running. So that's why they're getting the units back in the area, back into place. So you saw them there just for a moment. They're holding at the intersection because they had to clear it before they could make that turn. And now he's kind of picking up a little bit of speed. Now that he saw the police department behind him, he's back up to about 50 to 60 miles an hour here on Florence Avenue.
Ileana, still any talk about a pit maneuver here? I'm curious as to why they haven't done that, why they haven't called in either Sheriff's Department or LAPD if they don't do it, or even the CHP, or put out a spike strip.
Yeah, still no talk of the pit maneuver, incredibly. And I would say speed is one reason, but there's been times when the speeds have been appropriate and they could do it. Even now, he's going about 40. It's a little bit fast for a pit, but there's times when he makes that turn where he would slow down to less than that, and they'd be able to do it. So it could be a situation where, because they know that he was armed at one point, that he could possibly still be armed with a secondary weapon, and for that reason, they want to be very cautious and not perform a pit maneuver. But spike strips, we have heard. They asked for a unit who was equipped with those to come out to the pursuit. But unfortunately, even though he keeps circling the same area and making lots of turns in the same cities, he hasn't really circled the same street.
Now in
Walnut
Park now in Walnut Park, right, Ileana? This is an area that this driver has not yet been on this pursuit.
Yeah, this is the first time we enter into Walnut Park. You see the streets there, Broadway and Pacific, and making that turn there onto Pacific. You saw the airstrip there for just a moment. It continues to call out the streets. And so at this point, it's unclear to me whether the person in the vehicle knows that that's the police helicopter or not. I believe that he's high enough to where he wouldn't see him, but he definitely saw that unit there. So I believe that unit may be getting into place. We'll find out here in just a moment if we see him get behind him. But he's going to make yet another right turn here. This one's going to be onto Flower Street. And he's slowing down significantly. Let's see if now's the time that he'll pull over and take off running. That's kind of what the police department is expecting, considering how many turns he's made in this area.
You know what's amazing, Robert and Ileana, is that so often when we see people driving around surface streets and neighborhoods, they don't know the area, and so they will often turn into a cul-de-sac or a dead end or something like that. This guy obviously knows the area he's in. That has not happened.
Yeah, he knows the area really well. I'm really impressed that he hasn't driven himself into a dead end, but this may be it, because I think this is a dead end street. So let's see.
I think interesting.
That would perhaps bring an end to this, because we haven't seen him come into a situation like this. It's either not a through street or it's going to be a dead end street. I don't want to pull out too much because I don't want to lose him, since it does go through. Okay, so my pilot, Jim, is telling me he believes it is going to go through. So we'll find out here when it comes to an end for sure. But at this point, no ground units directly behind him, still just the airship overhead. And a guy who really doesn't want to be on the freeway. He likes the surface streets. And there's the unit there. So there is 1 unit, 2 units behind him, but they don't have their lights on. They're just trailing him with their lights off. And that would also mean that their sirens would be off as well.
Driver wanted for vandalism, threw a gun out of the window at some point in this pursuit that started about an hour and a half ago in the city of Bell and has wound its way through neighboring cities and communities. Right now, the Bell Police still in pursuit as the lead law enforcement agency. And as we continue to watch this, we want to let you know that we are going to go to The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon in just about a minute or so. But we will continue on this pursuit on NBCLA.com and our NBC LA app.
In the meantime, we've got about another minute or so before we switch over to The Tonight Show. Ileana, give us an idea what direction he's in, what city he's in at this point.
So he's picking up speed there. You see our compass there, our ground compass here in News Chopper 4 Alpha in an easterly direction on Florence Avenue. He's still in the Huntington Park area, just on the border with Walnut Park. And he's got an intersection coming up. We'll see if he stops for this light or not. Most of the time he doesn't. And in this case, he got lucky. He got the green and continuing on their wrong side of the road here for just a second as the City of Bell Police Department continues to follow this vandalism suspect who is also wanted for throwing a gun out of the vehicle.
All right. Once again, we are going to switch over to the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon at this point, but you can stay with us on NBCLA.com.
And as we're joining us now on the web or on our app, we want to ask Ileana one very pertinent question, who's flying overhead in News Chopper 4 Alpha. Ileana, what is your fuel situation?
Funny that you ask. I was just asking my pilot, Jim. He actually says we have 20 minutes left, so we'll continue to follow this.
Did he just pull into a gas station here?
Look at you got to be kidding me.
You called
pulled into
it
a gas
earlier,
station.
Ileana.
It's amazing. You know, you do this long enough and you see some of these crazy antics. And so when you've seen it twice in the last few months, I guess now we can call it a trend. So he's at the gas station, but he hasn't come out yet. So we'll see if he attempts to get gas. Like we saw in the previous cases, the people in the pursuits didn't have money. And so then they had to ask a good Samaritan for some cash to get gas. So this may be a situation where he needs the gas, doesn't have the cash to do it, and is going to continue on and try his luck, perhaps at another gas station. But
was the
right
opportunity
there,
for the police to move in and potentially block him there, no?
It would have been. It absolutely would have been. Let me widen out, though, to see how far away they are, because they weren't within proximity to do it. I see the airship, but he actually did not have any ground units directly behind the guy at the time. They're on neighboring streets, so they weren't able to get behind him in time to pull him over in that case. But that would have been a great time to box him in, get behind the vehicle. There's the airship there. It's the LA County Sheriff's Department helicopter overhead. And now the pursuit continuing here on surface streets in the city of Bell.
Is this a neighborhood we're in at this point?
Yeah, so this is going to be a residential neighborhood. It's going to be, just single-family homes and some apartment complexes on either side. And just looking at some of the streets, Bear Avenue, I don't remember him being on this particular street before. So we'll see once he comes up to some of the other streets. Yeah, he's been on Bell Avenue before. That he has. This was an area that there's the cops, so let's see if they get behind him. This was an area that he circled before, and now he's slowing down dramatically. He just saw that officer and didn't feel the need to run, so perhaps this is it, perhaps it is not. Continuing on.
And again, Ileana, are we in a surveillance mode or a tracking mode? Because I'm confused. We see the officers there, but not an active pursuit.
Yeah, not an active pursuit in the sense that they're not directly behind him with their lights and sirens, but that officer that we just saw, actually, he's going to hang a U-turn and come back behind him. So what I'm noticing is that they're kind of in the shadows. So they're following him, but they're giving him about at least a block distance so that he thinks he's not being followed and will drive a little more carefully and follow some of the rules of the road. For the most part, it seems to work. And the airship's still overhead. Every now and then, he'll put his night sun on the vehicle so that the officers will know where the vehicle is located. But you see the cars there. It's at least 3 of them. Mm-hmm. And I'm also thinking that they're just trailing him a little bit closer since he's been in that area before. And now they know that he needs gas because he pulled that over at the gas station, that he may be looking for somewhere to ditch the car and take off running and try his luck on foot.
Well, for the most part, the last 15, 20 minutes or so, he's actually been obeying the rules of the road. He's got his headlights back on. Here he is pulling into another parking lot.
He's done this before.
Yeah, this is. Yeah. Oh, there we go. Let's see. Officers might box him in now.
Oh.
So close, but he was able to slip through the cracks and back the way he came now on Gage Avenue and Gifford Street in the Southgate area.
Ileana, Colleen asked a question before, and I think it's worth repeating and pursuing. If we know this is someone that the initial warrant was for vandalism, but do we have an indication that this person could be wanted, or people inside could be wanted for something much more, and that is why that these officers are taking it as seriously as they are, and perhaps as carefully as they are?
I believe so, and I think that the fact that he threw a gun out the window has a lot to do with it. Because they know he was armed at one point, it doesn't mean that he doesn't have a secondary weapon in the vehicle that he could use against them. So for that reason, they still have to treat it as if he is armed. Even though they have possession of one of his weapons already, they don't know if that's all he had. So for that reason, they're going to treat it a little bit more carefully. And again, vandalism was the reason they tried to pull him over, but he could have other warrants against him, which is why he doesn't want to pull over, because he knows that whatever other faults he has against him could put him away for a long time. And now it's been over an hour and a half that he's been leading officers on this pursuit, driving recklessly at least half the time, so they could count all of those violations against him as well.
Where is the closest black and white at this point? Is it still the city of Bell?
Yeah, so it's still going to be the City of Bell Police Department behind. I see him maybe about an eighth of a mile behind him. So he's on this same street. So he's also on Randolph Street, but just a little behind him. So that's about the distance that they're giving him. They're giving him about a block's distance, but they don't have their lights and sirens on, which should make it a little bit more difficult for the person in this pursuit to see and hear the units behind him.
Going the wrong way there. And Ileana, not to play dad here, but again, you tell us when you were getting to that point that you need to stop and refuel, then, you know, we are going to conclude our coverage here on the web, and of course have more tomorrow morning on Today in LA Weekend, and that starts at 7 a.m. So how you doing there?
Oh. Yeah, I'm just looking. He's going
so we're
up
still looking
one
at
way,
it. We have about 15 minutes left, Robert. So thank you very much for the concern. Of course, as you said, we'll continue to follow this as long as we can, and have more on Today in LA tomorrow morning. But for now, the pursuit continues here, wrong way on Randolph Street, a small little street.
Yeah, going up the wrong way for quite a while now,
and
probably at least half a mile.
Ladies, what city are we in?
So it looks like it's going to be Bell still. So
back to where we started.
Yeah, so we're back where we started, also very close to Maywood. He's kind of hugging them both. So Maywood, we saw him in that area for a really long time. I was certain that's where he was going to ditch the car, considering how many turns he made, and he didn't get lost and end up having to make a U-turn anywhere. But in the direction that he's going, it should put him pretty close to the 710 freeway. I can't say that he'll get on the freeway because he doesn't seem to prefer to be on the freeway. But now he's making a turn here on Atlantic Boulevard, which is the major here. Atlantic actually parallels the 710 freeway for a good stretch. There's a police officer there waiting at the intersection, so we'll see if he gets behind him with his lights and sirens. We haven't seen that in a little bit. It's just been trailing him with the lights off, and that's exactly what happened. He turned his lights on there for just a second, and now has his lights back off.
Ileana, if they typically know who's in the car, who's behind the wheel, would they have someone at this point at the residence as well waiting for him to come in if that's what they think they're going to do?